India, home to nearly one-fifth of humanity, birthplace of some of the world's oldest religions, and the cradle of civilizations that flourished thousands of years before many nations even existed. But how did a land of ancient cities, mighty empires, brilliant philosophers, devastating invasions, and colonial rule become the world's largest democracy? From the mysterious ruins of the Indus Valley to the rise of Ashoka, the splendor of the Mughals, the struggle for independence, and the emergence of a modern global power. This is the incredible story of India. Before we begin, if you enjoy deep dives into the rise and fall of civilizations, ancient empires, forgotten kingdoms, and the stories that shaped our world, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. It takes just a second, and it helps the channel bring more epic history documentaries like this one to life. Now, let's travel back over 5,000 years to the dawn of Indian civilization. India, a land of more than 1 billion people, thousands of languages, hundreds of cultures, dozens of religions, and a history so vast that it stretches back further than almost any civilization on Earth. This is the story of how a collection of ancient cities, kingdoms, empires, philosophers, conquerors, merchants, and revolutionaries became the modern nation we know today. From the mysterious streets of the Indus Valley to the rise of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. From mighty emperors like Ashoka and Chandragupta to the splendor of the Mughals, the struggle against British rule, and the birth of the world's largest democracy. This is the complete history of India. Our story begins over 5,000 years ago. At a time when Egypt was building pyramids and Mesopotamia was inventing writing, another great civilization was flourishing along the Indus River. Today, we call it the Indus Valley Civilization. Its greatest cities were Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. But these were not primitive settlements. They were among the most advanced urban centers in the ancient world. Their streets were laid out in perfect grids. Their houses were built from standardized bricks. They had public baths, covered drainage systems, and even indoor toilets. In many ways, these cities were cleaner and better planned than many cities that would come thousands of years later. Yet the greatest mystery remains their writing. Thousands of seals have been discovered, but no one has successfully deciphered the script. We still do not know what these people called themselves. We do not know their kings, their stories, or even their language. Then, around 1900 BC, something happened. The cities began to decline. Trade collapsed. Populations shrank. The great urban centers were abandoned. Why? Climate change? River shifts? Economic decline? No one knows for certain. One of history's greatest civilizations vanished, leaving behind only questions. But India's story was only beginning. As the Indus cities faded, a new culture emerged across northern India. This was the Vedic age. The people of this era composed the Vedas, the oldest sacred texts of Hindu tradition. Unlike the urban Indus people, these early communities were largely pastoral. Cattle represented wealth, horses transformed warfare, and tribes competed for land and resources. The Rig Veda describes a world of warriors, priests, and tribal chiefs. Over time, these societies expanded eastward into the fertile plains of the Ganges River. Agriculture grew, settlements expanded, and gradually, the foundations of Hindu civilization began to take shape. It was during this period that concepts such as dharma, karma, sacrifice, and cosmic order developed. The caste system also began to emerge. What started as social divisions gradually hardened into a rigid hierarchy that would influence Indian society for centuries. Yet alongside these developments came some of humanity's deepest philosophical questions. What is the soul? What is reality? What happens after death? These questions inspired the Upanishads, texts that transformed Indian thought forever. By the 6th century BC, India was changing rapidly. Cities were growing. Trade was expanding. Powerful kingdoms known as Mahajanapadas dominated northern India. But many people were dissatisfied. Religious rituals had become expensive. Social hierarchies seemed increasingly unfair. And new thinkers began searching for alternative paths. Two of the most influential figures in world history emerged during this period. The first was Mahavira. The second was Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. Born a prince, Siddhartha lived a life of luxury. But after encountering sickness, old age, and death, he abandoned his palace in search of truth. Years later, sitting beneath a Bodhi tree, he achieved enlightenment. His teachings spread rapidly. The Buddha rejected rigid social divisions. He taught compassion, self-discipline, and the path to liberation from suffering. At the same time, Mahavira taught the principles of Jainism, emphasizing non-violence and self-control. Together, these movements reshaped the spiritual landscape of India. While philosophers debated truth, a kingdom called Magadha was rising to power. Its location was ideal: rich farmland, abundant iron, strategic rivers, and ambitious rulers. Then came a young man named Chandragupta Maurya. Guided by the brilliant strategist Chanakya, Chandragupta overthrew the Nanda dynasty and founded the Mauryan Empire around 321 BC. For the first time, much of the Indian subcontinent came under a single ruler. Soon after, another threat emerged. Alexander the Great had invaded northwestern India. Although Alexander withdrew, his successors remained. Chandragupta confronted them. He defeated Seleucus, one of Alexander's generals, and expanded his empire even further. India had become a major world power, but the greatest Mauryan ruler was still to come. Ashoka began his reign as a conqueror, determined, ambitious, relentless. His most famous campaign was against Kalinga. The war was devastating. Ancient sources describe over 100,000 deaths. When Ashoka surveyed the battlefield afterward, he saw bodies, suffering, and destruction everywhere. Something changed. The conqueror experienced a profound transformation. Ashoka embraced Buddhism. He renounced aggressive warfare. Instead of spreading his empire through conquest, he sought to spread moral values through compassion and good governance. He built roads, hospitals, rest houses, and monuments. His inscriptions carved into stone pillars survive to this day. They speak of tolerance, justice, and concern for all living beings. Few rulers in history have undergone such a dramatic transformation, and few have left such a lasting legacy. After the Mauryan Empire declined, India entered centuries of political fragmentation. Yet out of this turbulence emerged another great empire. The Guptas. Beginning around 320 AD, the Gupta Empire ushered in what historians often call India's Golden Age. Science flourished, literature flourished, mathematics flourished. One of the greatest scholars of this era was Aryabhata. He argued that the Earth rotates on its axis. He calculated astronomical phenomena with remarkable accuracy. Indian mathematicians also developed the decimal system and the concept of zero, ideas that would eventually transform global science. Meanwhile, poets like Kalidasa produced masterpieces still admired today. Art, architecture, and learning reached extraordinary heights. India became one of the intellectual centers of the world. While northern India experienced cycles of empire and fragmentation, southern India developed its own powerful civilizations, the Cholas, the Cheras, and the Pandyas. These kingdoms dominated maritime trade across the Indian Ocean. Indian merchants sailed to Arabia, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Spices, textiles, precious stones, and ideas flowed across vast distances. The Cholas eventually built one of the greatest naval powers in Asian history. Under Rajaraja Chola and Rajendra Chola, fleets crossed the Bay of Bengal and projected Indian influence deep into Southeast Asia. Magnificent temples rose across southern India. The Brihadiswara Temple remains one of the architectural wonders of the medieval world. India was not isolated. It was a major player in a global network connecting East and West. Beginning in the 7th century, a new force emerged: Islam. Arab traders had long visited India's western coast, but political expansion soon followed. Over time, Muslim dynasties established control over parts of northern India. In 1206, the Delhi Sultanate was founded. Turkic rulers introduced new administrative systems, artistic styles, and cultural influences. Persian language and culture became increasingly important. Yet India did not simply absorb foreign influences, it transformed them. Indian and Islamic traditions blended in unique ways. Architecture evolved, music evolved, cuisine evolved. A new chapter in Indian civilization had begun. In 1526, Babur defeated the Sultan of Delhi and founded the Mughal Empire. His descendants would create one of the richest and most powerful states on earth. Among them, one ruler stands above the rest: Akbar the Great. Akbar expanded the empire dramatically, but he was more than a conqueror. He welcomed scholars from different religions, promoted tolerance, and sought to unite diverse peoples under one government. Under the Mughals, India experienced tremendous prosperity. Trade flourished, cities expanded, art reached new heights, and monumental architecture transformed the landscape. The most famous example remains the Taj Mahal. Built by Shah Jahan in memory of his wife Mumtaz Mahal, it became one of the most recognizable buildings on earth. Yet beneath the splendor, challenges were growing. Regional powers were rising. The empire was becoming increasingly difficult to control, and a new threat was arriving by sea. European traders began arriving in India in the 1500s. First came the Portuguese, then the Dutch, the French, and finally the British. At first, they came for trade, but trade gradually turned into political control. The British East India Company expanded its influence through alliances, diplomacy, and warfare. A turning point came in 1757 at the Battle of Plassey. From that moment onward, British power grew rapidly. Over the next century, vast areas of India fell under British control. The British built railways, telegraphs, and modern administrative systems. But they also extracted enormous wealth. Traditional industries declined. Famines devastated millions, and resentment grew. In 1857, Indian soldiers and civilians launched a massive rebellion. Although it failed, it changed everything. The British Crown took direct control. The era of the British Raj had begun. By the late 19th century, Indian nationalism was rising. The Indian National Congress was founded. Educated Indians increasingly demanded self-government. Then came one of history's most influential figures, Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi believed in nonviolent resistance. Through protests, boycotts, and civil disobedience, he mobilized millions. The Salt March became a symbol of resistance worldwide. But Gandhi was not alone. Leaders such as Jawaharlal Nehru, Subhas Chandra Bose, and countless others contributed to the independence movement. After World War II, Britain was exhausted. maintaining the empire became increasingly difficult. The end was approaching. On August 15, 1947, India finally achieved independence. But freedom came with tragedy. British India was divided into two nations, India and Pakistan. The partition triggered one of the largest migrations in human history. Millions crossed newly drawn borders. Violence erupted. Communities that had lived together for generations were suddenly divided. An estimated 1 to 2 million people lost their lives. The scars of partition remain visible even today. Yet despite the trauma, a new nation had been born. Independent India faced enormous challenges: poverty, illiteracy, religious tensions, and the task of governing hundreds of millions of people. Yet the country endured. A democratic constitution came into force in 1950. Elections became regular features of political life. Infrastructure expanded. Agricultural reforms boosted food production. Scientific institutions grew. India developed nuclear technology, a space program, and world-class universities. Economic reforms in 1991 accelerated growth even further. Cities like Bengaluru emerged as global technology hubs. Indian companies expanded worldwide. The nation that once exported spices now exports software, pharmaceuticals, and advanced technology. India's spacecraft reached Mars. Its films captivated global audiences. Its culture influenced every continent. Today, India is one of the world's most important nations. A nuclear power, a technological giant, the world's largest democracy, and home to nearly 1/5 of humanity. But modern India is not simply the product of recent decades. It is the result of a story thousands of years in the making. A story that began in the streets of Harappa, passed through the wisdom of the Vedas, the teachings of Buddha, the empire of Ashoka, the discoveries of Aryabhata, the grandeur of the Mughals, the struggle against colonialism, and the determination of millions who fought to shape their own future. India's history is not just the story of one nation. It is the story of one of humanity's greatest civilizations, and its next chapter is still being written. And so, from the mysterious cities of the Indus Valley to the bustling technology hubs of the 21st century, India's story spans more than 5,000 years of innovation, conquest, resilience, and transformation. If you enjoyed this journey through one of humanity's greatest civilizations, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which period of Indian history fascinated you the most. And if you'd like to see more complete histories of the world's greatest civilizations, empires, and nations, there's plenty more to come. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter of history.